All right, cool. So it looks like we are all good. So we're just going to get started. Today we're going to be mixing a song called Boogie Nights from a band called Adventureland. It's a band I'm mixing with right now. It's a client of mine. Picked this one because this is a really difficult song to mix. And it's going to actually be probably a little bit closer to the types of songs that you are going to be mixing. Maybe not in genre, but in quality. So the band members of this band, they were really passionate about wanting to record uh, this entire this entire album from home. You know, like they wanted to do the whole thing in their living room, didn't want to go to any studio. Totally great. Obviously, like that's what we teach because so many people have the ability to record their own music from home now. You don't have to go to a really, really fancy studio. That said, they didn't do any research, didn't do any learning before they recorded all this stuff. So a lot of the tracks are pretty rough. Like for instance, in the vocals, if you listen to those, you can hear a ton of room reverb in it because they recorded it in a really, really big living room. No acoustic treatment, no furniture, nothing like that. Um, I have actually gone ahead of time before I sent all of you the stems, did some editing, did some phase alignment. It was really rough before I sent you all this stuff. But overall, the song's awesome. And so I'm really excited to show it to you. But it's going to be a great example of like, okay, here's what we're going to need to do to compensate for some kind of rough recording rather than me showing you a perfectly recorded track and not really having to do much mixing on it, really at all. So, excuse me. I am starting to lose my voice a little bit. You're going to see me drinking a lot of water. Let me know in the comments if I am hard to hear or if the track is too loud in comparison to my voice. I can always turn everything down or up. So, before we get started on the actual mix, like I said, I do want to go over my organization here because I think it's really, really important to get your prep done before you start to mix any tracks. So I'm obviously doing this in Logic. Not everyone has Logic, but in all of your DAWs, they all have some sort of organization set up to where you can do something similar to this. It might not be the exact same system that I have. That's okay. But I would definitely recommend creating some kind of organization system that works for you and then making a template of it. So this actually is a template that I have saved, and every single time I get a mix from a client or every single time I write a song and like I move on to the mixing stage, I will transfer all of the tracks into this particular mix template. Makes my life a whole lot easier. So right now we have what's known as folders or rather what's known as track stacks in Logic. And I've got all of the instruments in their own track stack. So I've got the drums, I've got the bass, EG for electric guitars. I have the synths, which is really just one single synth, all of the lead vocals, and all the background vocals. Now, if I hit the drop down button, you can see now I see even more folders. And the cool thing about this, each of these track stacks or folders are actually just buses. So, you know how we talk all the time at Musician on a Mission how important it is to um, have instrument buses where you send all of the microphones from a particular instrument to, because then you can do all of your mixing on that one bus. Not only does it help to glue tracks together, but it also makes the mixing process a lot faster because you're not having to put the exact same EQ or the exact same compressor on every single microphone. So if I hit this little drop down arrow, you can see here's all of my snares. I've got my snare top microphone, my snare bottom microphone, and a sample that I actually added in myself just to kind of beef it up a little bit. If I go down to the electric guitars, you can see here's all of my different electric guitars. I have what I'm just referring to as electric guitar 1, and this is a double, so I have actually two different tracks. Electric guitar 2, 3, so on and so forth. Originally, when I got all of these, before I bounced them down to stems for all of you to download, they were actually 4 or 5 different microphones and direct input, stuff like that. So having track stacks that were actually buses was much, much more necessary because I had just tons of tracks. Obviously, I wouldn't have to really do that if it's just a single track. It's kind of unnecessary at that point. But that is my organization system for this. I also made sure to have the exact same color system for every single mix I do. So if I open up, let me actually really quickly open up a new from template, a new project from template, so you can see what my original template looks like. And we're gonna not save that, just so that you can see what I'm talking about. So this is my original template. I'll get rid of that for a second. I'm gonna actually just take everything down. So you can see I've got my drums, my bass, my electric guitar, my acoustic guitar, my piano, my synths, my vocals, and my background vocals. Now all of these have a coloring system that I've given them, and I've made sure not to change any of the colors whenever I've gotten my actual mix in place, all of my tracks in place. That is extremely helpful for you because I know I've taught myself orange is bass. So if I'm trying to find a bass guitar really quickly, all I have to do is scroll up and look for my orange tracks. Or I've taught myself, synths are blue. So I've just got to scroll down and look for my blue tracks, and instantly I know, oh, these are the synths. It helps the visual aspect of mixing go way faster. You have to make a lot fewer decisions. You have to look a lot less for your tracks, which ultimately is going to help you to mix quite a bit faster. Another really helpful thing I have, I don't know if all DAWs have this, but one thing that I have set up is I actually have a little note section in Logic where I have sort of my my steps. For me, this is really just the steps for, I don't actually have the mixing steps. All I have is the steps for like the prep and the edit and stuff like that, because it tends to be really sequential, and it tends to be really just like small things. Like I've got to go and I've got to set the tempo, and I've got to color the tracks and set the buffer size and stuff like that. And a lot of times I forget. So it's really nice to have sort of a checklist of sorts that I can go through as I'm preparing to start my mix. I can get rid of all of these. I can actually go in and just delete stuff if I want. So that by the time I've gone through all of these steps, I'm ready to mix. Now you can create your own workflow outline as you'd like. This one is just mine. Doesn't have to be anything quite as complicated as mine, or it could be more complicated, up to you. One other very helpful thing I have is I have section markers already set up and already colored. So I can go in and say like, okay, this is the intro. And then I can change this and say, this is verse 1. And so on and so forth. I don't have to go in and individually create these or individually color them. All I have to do is listen to the song and just start to go through and be like, okay, cool, verse 1 starts right here. Let me change the title of that. So that's very, very helpful as well. Finally, and you'll see this in my in the actual session, I have all of my routing preset up. So in Logic, you can actually hide tracks. You can do this in most other DAWs as well. So if I hit my H button, all of a sudden, look at all this stuff that pops up here at the bottom. So I'm going to hit that. So these are all of my sends, and some routing stuff I've set up. These are my references. Edits is just, that's my own thing. No need to worry about that. And then I've got a few extra buses set up, which again, that's my own thing. You don't need to worry about that. But right now, let's say I go to electric guitar, and you can see that every single thing is going to bus 2. It's all going to the same output. Well, obviously that's not the stereo output. So what is bus 2? So I have a bit of a special routing system set up, which I love doing it this way. Couldn't recommend it more. John, I will get to your stat question in just a moment. Don't let me forget. But I actually have all of the instruments going to their own buses. So you can see I have a percussion bus. This is just drums. I have an instrument bus. This is just instruments. And I have a vocals bus. This is just vocals. Now, one cool thing about this is that I can control all of the instruments, all of the drums, and all the vocals from just these 3 buses if I want to. Now, I don't really do much heavy processing, but if I wanted to do some kind of automation, for instance, like if I wanted to automate all the instruments just a little bit loud, maybe like a dB louder, I can do that. You know, if I wanted to, maybe in the chorus, like I want all the instruments just to be a dB louder, or I want in the chorus all the vocals to be just a dB louder. This is a great place for you to be able to do that. One other thing that I have set up that I really like, I'm actually going to bring up my mix view. That'll make this a little bit easier. So you can see I have gain plugins set up on every one of these buses. And I actually turn these on before I even start the volume balancing. That's really helpful just because, you know, it allows me to create some automatic headroom before it goes to the mix output. And I'm able to turn tracks kind of closer to where they actually would be. So like, for instance, let's say, you know, I want to have this one set up at -3. Well, without all of these gain plugins on, you can see I have this set to -7 dB, so I would actually have to set this to -10. And once you start to get down there, the resolution of the track starts to get kind of rough. You can see, you know, as I start turning this down, the numbers go down faster. Whereas if I'm up here, you have just a more accurate resolution. I can move the volume fader around a lot more, and it doesn't actually change the volume nearly as much as when I'm down there. So having this extra headroom is very helpful. The other thing that I do, I love this trick. I'm a really big fan of it. I actually have an EQ on every single one of these. Let me change this up so you can see it. On every single one of these buses. So you can see here is the percussion bus EQ, here's the instrument bus EQ, and here's the vocals bus EQ. Now, the cool thing about this is that what I'm basically doing, you can see I have a really small cut, just like a dB, around 4,000 hertz, so 4 kilohertz. Now, what that's doing is saying from the get-go, I want to make sure that I'm creating space in the presence area of the main vocals. So I'm cutting just a little bit out of the entire drum section, just a little bit out of the entire instrument section, and boosting just a little bit out of the entire vocal section. Now, that's not necessarily going to be a dramatic change or anything like that, but the nice thing about it is that I turn this on before I even start mixing, so it gives my vocals just a little bit of a nudge in the right direction from the get-go. It creates a hole for my vocals from the get-go, so that it's a little bit easier to hear the vocals through the rest of the band without having to go in at the very end of the mix and tweak a whole bunch of stuff. So I'm a really big fan of that. I will say a lot of times I recommend using Forgetting the name of the EQ. Blah. A linear EQ. Anytime you're doing anything over tons of instruments. I don't think I would really recommend doing that if you do this particular trick, because what happens is you get such high latency that whenever you're doing your mixing, you actually hear the results of what you're doing about a second and a half later if you have this many linear EQs on. So for instance, if I am, doing a sweep EQ and I'm moving this across, I'm actually not going to hear the results of that sweep until about a second and a half later. So I might be like, oh, cool, this sounds great. But really, what I'm hearing is this, because I've already moved on from there. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's kind of some hard-earned wisdom for you. And all this extra stuff is really more just stuff for me. And then I also have, obviously, my whole mix bus set up, usually the things that I use on my mix bus. I don't use all these things on every mix, but it's really nice to have everything already there, so that I can kind of just get started from a good place and then can tweak. Again, just to make all of this a lot easier. So let me open up Boogie Nights and we'll get started. So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, let me answer John's question on how to set up a stack in Logic. Now, if you're not using Logic, it's going to be a different system for, whatever DAW you're using. Let me just create 2 new audio tracks. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a folder track. So I'm going to right click. I'm going to go down to create track stack. You can also do Shift Command D. And you can see there's 2 types of stacks. There is a folder stack and a summing stack. Now the folder stack is basically it's just a folder. It's just for organization purposes. Whereas the summing stack is a folder as well, but it also acts as an instrument bus. So basically anything I do on the folder track is going to get applied to all of the tracks inside of that folder. So first off, I want to have a folder stack. I'm going to hit create. I'm just going to call this test. So you can see now there's a little arrow, and if I pop down, look, here's the tracks. Now, here's the problem. Again, this is just a thing in Logic. I actually really wish that they would fix this. But if I right-click and I hit create, oh, they fixed it. Oh, nice. Cool, they must have fixed this in the newest update. I just updated Logic yesterday. Oh, very cool. Okay, cool. Well, you guys are seeing this in real time. I used to have to basically do like a workaround for a bug that's in Logic, but it looks like they fixed it. So yeah, what I do, so create the folder first, and then I want to create another track stack, and I'm going to create a summing stack. And now you can see I have a summing stack, and you can see the folder has no actual audio track on it. Like there's no way for me to add plugins or EQs or anything like that. But the summing stack does. So I can go in here, I can add gain plugins, I can add EQs, I can do anything that I want. It's just a bus. It's the exact same thing as a bus, but it also acts as a folder. So it makes organization 1,000,000% easier because, like I said, I can have all of my electric guitars in one big folder, but I can also have all of my individual instrument tracks, or rather instrument buses, in here as well. So it's a really big help. Could not recommend it more. I would do some Googling if you have your own DAW that isn't Logic. I do some Googling on how to do something like that. You won't be able to do the exact same thing. It might even be better in your DAW, honestly. But I do some Googling, figure that out. So Julia asks, why a folder and a bus? So, like I was saying before, the nice thing about having folders and buses is that, if let's say right here, let me actually solo this out. This is two different tracks. So this is the same electric guitar part doubled. So they recorded it twice. Let me actually grab this because it's faster. Okay. Now, if this was a folder track for these two individual things, I wouldn't be able to do any kind of processing. I would still have to, if I wanted to send both of these to a bus so that I could, compress them together, really glue them together, I'd still have to create a bus. Like it would not be through the folder system. But because I have a summing stack, I'm able to basically have my bus right next to these two tracks. So I'm able to do any processing I want. But I can also say, oh, I don't want to see these tracks. I just want to use the bus. Or, oh, I don't want to see all these electric guitar parts. I'm just going to minimize them because right now I'm working on the drums and I don't even want to worry about that. For me, like I'm a visual person, and so for me, it's easy for me to get overwhelmed by just 100 tracks all cascading down, down the entire workflow session. So I really do like to be able to minimize stuff. And also, you can program your own keystrokes for this kind of thing. So for instance, if I'm saying, oh, I actually want to be able to see all of my tracks, I can just do this and boom, I have literally everything perfectly organized. And then I can say, oh, this is all too big. I want to minimize everything down. Boom. And I can also just do it for one particular instrument. Fan it out, fan it back in. So hopefully that answers your question, John and Julia, on this kind of organization. Could not recommend it enough, especially if you make a template out of it. It's going to make mixing a ton faster and a lot less stressful. So, first of all, just a quick organization thing. In order to save our ears, and in order to give everyone a bathroom break so they don't miss anything, we are going to take a break 10 minutes before every hour. So 10:50, 11:50, 12:50, and then we're going until 2, so we won't take a break at the very end. We'll just finish it out. That'll be your time to get water, go to the bathroom, get food. Yes. If I miss it, someone let me know. Sometimes I kind of get in the zone, and I will take a pause. Unless we're like in the middle of a demonstration, and then I'll just say, hey, we'll hold off for just a sec. I am going to set a timer, though, before I forget. So, 15 minutes, and then we're going to take a quick break. Let's go from here. So let's get started. So first off, before we do anything else, I'm not going to set up my mix bus processing quite yet. I want to do a volume balance. I just want to get a general idea of what this mix is going to sound like. So right now I have every single track. I'm actually going to just fan all the tracks out. I have every single track fully set to 0. So absolutely nothing is set correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn all of the individual tracks down, but I'm actually going to leave all of the buses the same for this moment. So I'm going to unselect all of them. Because if I turn the buses down also, then whenever I turn the tracks up, I'm not actually going to be able to hear anything because the buses are going to be down, and the buses really are kind of like the master control for the entire thing. Excuse me. Cool. So, oh my gosh, I literally just, well, let me try this again. I clicked out of it. The whole point of this is I'm going to turn everything down. There we go. Okay. All the tracks are down. So what we're going to do is we are going to do this in height order. Or actually, really quickly, Daedalus asks, are you sending the instrument's pre-fader to the buses? No, they are post-fader. So you can actually see basically the output of the instrument is set to the input of the bus. So the output is right here of this kick. That's bus 5. The input is right here, also bus 5. So any volume that I have that I'm turning up here is going to basically just be what's sent here. And the nice part about that is I'll be able to set like a general volume blend between my kick and my kick sample, or my snare top and my snare bottom. So we're going to be starting with the concept of height order. We talk about that a lot with Musician on a Mission. Basically, the idea is whenever you're doing a volume balance, you want to take everything down and start with your most important instrument and set it at a certain level. So for me, the most important instrument is my vocals. And I'm actually going to start in the chorus because the chorus is a little bit louder. This particular song, the solo is the loudest part of the song. You usually want to use the loudest part of the song, but there's no vocals in there, so I don't really want to use that. But I'm actually going to just loop this section because this is the part where the snare comes in. So, let me grab this. Let's go to my mixer. There we go. And I'm going to turn this up. I usually like to set it at just about -7. It just is helpful to have stuff turned down kind of from the get-go. Let me make sure I have my my gain plugin set up. I do not. Okay, good. I'm glad I checked. I'm also going to turn these on because it doesn't matter what the volume is. I just want to make sure that I have this stuff on. And then I'm actually going to do, well, no, for this mix I'm not going to do. Well, no, I will. So Gullfoss is a plugin. I love it. Again, it's one that we talk about a ton. It's kind of brand new. It's like an auto EQ to a certain extent. It automatically balances some of the frequencies of whatever is being inputted. I actually like to run everything through it really subtly, though I don't actually like to put it on vocals, so I tend to turn it off on vocals. But I just do some really, really subtle work. I think it just sort of helps to balance everything together, makes everything sound like one instrument. And I like to do it on these buses rather than the entire mix output because, again, like I don't actually think it sounds that great on vocals, but it sounds awesome on all instruments for the most part. So I tend to kind of leave that be. Is that everything that I want to do? Yes. Yes, it is. Okay, great. So, this is set -7.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet.
That's pretty darn quiet. I'm actually just going to set it to -5.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now.
Okay. You know, I'm kind of realizing Sometimes I forget my own system, which is kind of funny. If there is one track that's going to a bus, like I have these buses that have only one track, mostly just for my own organization purposes. Like I just got used to doing it that way. So if there's a bus and there's only one track and you're not doing any kind of volume balancing for like in between two different things, so like for instance here I need to do a volume balance between the kick and the kick sample, then you can actually just set this to 0 and turn the bus down instead, because really that's how you're going to be setting the volume of any of these things. So you can see, for instance, this one, I don't want to do that because there's two different doubles. I want to set a good blend between those two doubles. But this is only one microphone, so I'm going to take that, turn that down, take that, turn that down, so on and so forth. Oh, no. Yep, that should be the only ones. Great. Okay, so let's start over. So I'm only going to be working with the vocal chorus. I'm also going to take out the input so that we're not seeing my microphone constantly popping up. Okay, great. So let's turn this up.
Nights we spent together.
Set that at -5.
Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's
Great. Okay, for me, the next two important instruments are usually the snare and then the kick, and then after that tends to be the bass for me, because I like to balance the kick and the bass together. So let's start with the snare.
Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
That sounds pretty good to me. Now, one other trick, if you're mixing together lots of different mics or lots of different instruments, I didn't actually do this right now, but sometimes I will set the fader that I expect to be the highest. I'll just go ahead and set it to 0, and I'll turn everything else around it to a certain level, because then I can say, okay, cool, I'll just mess with the volume on the actual bus now, just to make this whole process a little bit easier.
Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay, that sounds pretty good to me. One thing I like to do after I've set levels, just for my own organization, is I will take that out. I'll close up the folder, just so that visually I know I've moved on from it. So let's move on to our kick.
Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus.
Okay, another thing to stay aware of whenever you're setting instrument levels. So you usually don't really want to have more than -6 dBs of volume coming in. That just gives you a decent amount of headroom. So if you need to turn your fader up, you're not going to be clipping at any point. So you can see right now with the kick, if I solo this out, I'm getting a ton. So now that I have a good balance, I'm just going to grab both of these tracks and I'm going to turn them down a little bit so that I'm not getting more than -6. That's pretty good.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet.
All right. Now let's move on to the bass.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you,
Yeah, I
but
expect the
you're
amp to be
ringing.
the highest.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but
Alright.
you're ringing. Nights we spent together.
So let's talk about a really cool low-end mixing trick that I really enjoy doing. I don't do this on every mix, but it's a good thing to know. So let's talk about it. Let me go to my mix output. And you can see on my master bus, which is really just my stereo output, I actually have a VU meter set up. And I use VU meters a ton whenever I mix because it's a great way to know how loud something is going to be perceived by the ear rather than how loud something actually is. Because the ear usually hears loudness in averages. And so this is a much slower way of reading volume. It's only getting the average volume kind of for every second or so. So this is way more accurate to how we hear sounds, whereas your standard dB meter that comes with pretty much every DAW is actually what's happening, but it's not actually accurate to what we are hearing. It's just accurate to like the physical sound waves that are getting created. I could go into a whole acoustical physics thing on that. I'm not going to. That's a deep, deep hole to go down. But one nice thing, usually, and this doesn't work always, but usually, on a VU meter, I can set my kick to be around -3. And if I can get my bass to be around 0 while the kick is going, that tends to balance my low end, at least my volume, pretty decently. Now, I'm not necessarily saying it literally has to be, 3 dBs and 0 dBs. I'm saying it's kind of just relative. So it could be at 7 and then, the bass is going up to 5 or 4 rather. One nice thing about this particular VU meter that I have, and there's tons of free ones out there, I'd recommend grabbing one. You actually have control of the amount of headroom. So I can kind of just turn up the amount of headroom that it's perceiving. So I can basically make it seem louder than it actually is to make it easier to say, okay, cool, this one's set now at -3 and the other one is set at 0. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let me just solo out the kick. So obviously right now, I'm not really pumping that much gain into my stereo output. It's only getting to about -10 VU. So I'm going to turn my headroom up. And that's getting to about... so that's getting to probably... Yeah, it's just getting to 3. Great. So now I'm going to turn up my bass guitar. And we're wanting it to get all the way to 0. Or live around 0 anyway. Okay, that's looking pretty good to me. And it's not like it's only barely hitting 0. It's just kind of averaging around in that area. Again, this is not a perfect science. This isn't a set it and forget it thing. But that's a really good way to get a good start, because setting the low end tends to be a little bit more difficult than setting the rest of the volumes, just because of the way low end acts in your room. Low frequencies are kind of wonky. So,
Nights we spent together, they've
and then
left
sometimes I'm kind of like, oh, now everything's too loud, so I might turn both of them down and I'll just keep them at the same ratio.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you. But
Okay, let's move on from here. So I'm actually just going to do the rest of the drums now. And the overheads left and right, I always want those to be pretty much at the exact same volume. So I'm going to just turn those up to regular. And the hi-hat, they only recorded the hi-hat for this small region. So I will get to that in a moment. But let me turn this down.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent.
Okay, that's sounding decent to me. Now let me turn the room mic up.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you.
Now this band really does like a lo-fi sound, kind of a little bit more garage bandy. So I'm gonna put a little bit more of that room mic in there.
Nights we spent together.
Now obviously like that's not a very clean sounding room mic, but I think that's the vibe that they're going for.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with.
And we'll be tweaking these volume balances pretty much over the course of the whole mix, so I'm sure that'll get messed with as well. Okay, let's move on to this electric guitar.
Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay. Now let's add in our background vocals.
Spent together.
And I'm actually going to... No, I'll still do this one.
Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
So this is something that happens sometimes whenever you're mixing lots of different instruments together initially. As I started adding more instruments in, it got louder and louder to the point where, you know, these harmonies, these background vocals rather, don't really match the volume of these background vocals. So I'm going to just grab all of them and turn them down a little bit.
Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
And you can tell this is kind of the continuation of those two, so I'm going to keep them at the same volume as before. And then I'm going to mess with these a little bit separately.
Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay, that sounds pretty good for this second. Okay, so what is this? I forget. Ah, yes. This band, so Adventureland is really into having a single synth drone that's basically on just the root note of the entire song, just playing throughout the entire song. So I'm going to mix this in real quietly. It will give a nice sense of back wall. It is going to take up some real estate that's in the frequency spectrum that I might not want to have taken up, so I might do some EQing on it later. But for now, we're just going to kind of create a nice vibe with it.
Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay, cool. So now we are going to go through and make some tweaks.
Stand together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying round what you're making. Stand together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying round what you're making. Stand together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying round what you're making.
Okay. Let me grab this.
Stand together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying round what you're making. Stand together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying round what you're making.
Okay, that's sounding decent to me. So we're going to go and do the volume balance for the rest of the song as well. One thing I can kind of already tell, let me go over to my mixer and look at my mix output. It's sounding really quiet. Like I did a pretty good job of preserving a lot of the headroom in the mix output. So let me look at this.
Stand together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying round.
Yeah, I did a good job. And here's the big difference. You know, if I didn't have these things, it's going to be a lot louder.
Stand together.
You know, and then I really struggle with headroom. So I'm going to keep those things on, and I'm probably just going to turn my headphones up a little bit once I kind of get to this point, because it's like, okay, yeah, I want to mix at a slightly higher level, but I want to make sure that I've got a pretty decent amount of headroom on my mix bus, which I'm actually going to compensate for in a little bit. And you'll see what I'm talking about whenever I say I'm going to compensate for it. But first off, I'm just going to turn my headphones up so I can hear a little bit better. I would suggest that you do the same. I can definitely turn my own microphone down if it ends up getting a little bit too loud for everybody. So just let me know. So I'm just going to start at the beginning, and as I see different instruments pop up, I'm going to bring them in. Woo! I want to turn this synth drone down. Goodness, that's loud. Back and do a better volume balance of that. So in this section, the bass is definitely more of a melody instrument than, you know, holding down the low end. So I'm not going to really do any volume automation right now, but eventually I'm going to want to come back, do volume automation to make sure all of the sections are consistent. And I'm probably going to turn the bass down in comparison to the chorus, where it's going to be quite a bit louder. So let's move on to the first verse.
All the glitter we've inhaled. Oh, you'd think we'd have some ailment to the lungs. So glistening.
All right, let me just repeat this.
Glistening and glistening and
That sounds pretty good to me. Okay, let's move on to the solo. I believe that's the last bit that has stuff that needs to be volume balanced. Let's get rid of all this. Cool. Okay, sounds decent to me. And then let's get this next bit. Cool. So that's everything. So I'm definitely going to be tweaking this over the course of the entire mix, and it 100% needs some pretty dramatic volume automation, especially in the bass, because the bass is such a prominent instrument for half the song, and then really ducks down and becomes more of your standard low end bass. But I'm not going to do that in this moment. I want to go and set up my mix bus. Before we do that, though, I do want to bring up why. No, I'm actually going to talk about that later. That's going to be confusing before we get into the mix bus. So, let me bring up my mixer. Oh, I've actually got to unhide it first. There we go. So, mix bus processing, obviously a very controversial topic in like the the mixing world. I'm actually gonna spit out my gum. Hold on, I put some gum in. It's hard to talk. Anyway, mix bus processing, controversial. A lot of people swear by it. A lot of people swear against it. I am a big fan of it personally. So long as it's adding a lot of really subtle goodness, not necessarily adding absolutely major stuff. So before we start doing anything, I am going to set my volume in such a way where any of the processing I do is basically is gain stage. We've talked before about excuse me. We've talked before about the digital sweet spot. That sweet spot that exists kind of around 0 dBVU or negative 18 dBFS. That's usually the place where plugins tend to sound best, because that's the place where analog gear sounds best, 0 dBVU. So I like to actually increase my volume or decrease my volume a little bit so that it's hitting around that area during kind of like the main section or the loudest section. I've actually got a cool little plugin called Hornet VU Meter. I forget who it's by. Who is it by? This is going to bother me if I don't know what it is. Well, I'm not sure who it's by, but one nice thing about it is it actually has a auto function, so I can say, okay, I want this to be peaking at like +1 VU, so it's averaging around 0 VU, and I want it to just change Hornet. Thank you. Oh, right, because it's the Hornet VU meter. Hornet is the brand name. Sometimes you just say things and you don't think them through. But yeah, this basically sets your volume automatically, which is a great way to do gain staging for stuff like this. So I'm gonna turn this on. I'm gonna hit the auto button. I want it to be set to +1 or +2 VU, just because, like I said, I want it more to be averaging around 0 dB VU. If it goes into the red for VU, it's not an issue. Whereas obviously going into the red on your standard volume meters down here, your dB full scale, those, if you go into the red on that, you're clipping, you're distorting. Whereas on a VU meter, it's more like, hey, maybe don't, or maybe do. You're going to start getting maybe a little bit of saturation on actual analog stuff after that point, but for digital, it's 100% fine. So I'm going to hit play, and we'll see what happens. I'm actually going to go to a different part. Let's say right here. Okay, I am going to change this. You can set a max peak as well, which is great. I'm going to change the max peak to -6. Oh no, actually I'll say -4, because really you're wanting between 6 and 4 dBs of headroom, just so that whenever you send it off to the mastering engineer, they've got enough headroom to work with. So let me try that again. Great. So, I hit it. One more time. Cool. Okay, so it turned it up about 3.5 decibels. But yeah, it's hitting kind of around that 0 dB area, so our plugins are going to sound best potential they can. Or rather, are going to sound the best they can. At their highest potential is what I meant to say. I crossed my wires. So, first thing I'm going to do, I actually have a system by Slate that emulates an actual console, like an analog mixing console like you would see in a really, really nice studio. I like putting that on. It's very subtle. I just kind of throw it onto the mix bus. Oftentimes, I'll also put it onto each individual instrument as well. It kind of just depends on what the vibe of this particular song is. So I'll probably go around. I really do like the Brit N is the Neve, which is a really nice console. So I'm going to end up staying there. But let's turn that on. And then I also am going to add in this Revival. Revival is actually a free plugin from Slate. I love it. It's fantastic. It just turns up the top end and does a bunch of extra secret sauce stuff, and turns up the bottom end and does a bunch of extra secret sauce stuff. So it's nice on a mix bus to use subtly, just because it just kind of enhances the whole thing. I should turn this on. That's important. You can hear how it adds just a little bit of, like the kick starts to sound a little bit louder, and it's just a hair of saturation. Okay, very cool. Now I'm going to add a little bit of Revival. I'm probably going to add this trimmer as well, because Revival kind of turns the volume up a little bit. it's really subtle, and that's honestly what I want. It just kind of subtly lifts it up just a hair. So after that, we are going to be going to our actual EQ. And once we get to our actual EQ, this is where reference tracks become basically a necessity at this point. And I actually have some reference tracks already loaded up. The entire point of doing mix bus EQ, Zia asks, does this require iLok? If I'm being honest, I'm not sure. Probably. I downloaded it like 5 years ago, so I really don't remember. But probably does, yes. Oh man, what was I talking about? Yeah, so doing your mix bus processing to a certain extent is, helping to nudge your entire mix in the right direction. And you're not really going to know what the right direction is if you're not using your reference tracks. And honestly, I should have been using my reference tracks to do my volume balance as well. That's how you do a proper volume balance, is you're listening to your references and you're trying to set your levels kind of similar to your references levels, albeit probably a lot lower. You're going to have to turn your reference down to make sure that it's at the same loudness. But I didn't do that because I forgot in this moment. So we are going to listen to our reference, and we're going to use that as a way to set our EQ curve.
Everything tomorrow, all the time. Don't you wake me for me.
Cool. So now let me go over here, and I'll mute that. And I'm going to grab this, and this is just a little preset that I have on here for myself. And let's listen to what we've got. So I can pretty much instantly already tell this is a lot darker. It's a lot darker. So I'm probably going to need some boosting up here in the upper mids and the highs. It also feels a lot muddier. Let me listen again. Okay. Yeah, so that's a lot clearer, which tells me I need a lot more in the top end, in the upper mids, and I need a lot less in the low mids. So let me try experimenting a little bit. Man, my computer's freaking out. Well, quick tech moment. Give me just a minute to fix this. MIDI timeout. Please restart your computer and then relaunch Logic Pro X. Oh my goodness. I'd love to not do that since we're having a full teaching session right now. Because that will end the stream, and I don't want to end the stream. I'm going to turn off Logic and restart it, and we'll see if that fixes our issue. This is the fun part of mixing, where you're just like, oh, cool. I got to spend half of my time just problem-solving tech issues that I have no idea what they are. while I'm doing this, does anybody have any questions so far on things that we have done, things that I might be doing? This might take 5 or 10 minutes, so I'd love to answer some questions to fill the time. Michael asks, do you always mix on headphones? I do not always mix on headphones, no. I'm doing that mostly for our benefit. If I mixed on speakers, it would get caught up in here, and you just wouldn't really hear a great version of the audio. But usually I'll use my headphones for referencing. The headphones don't do a great job of space. It's hard to do panning and reverb on headphones, but they do a good job of showing you problems with like compression and problems with the frequency spectrum. Headphones are kind of like a magnifying glass that you can use on your mix. If you're using it always, it's kind of hard to do everything, but if you're using it sometimes, it's really great for problem solving. That said, for me, I've actually got some pretty big issues in the low end in my room, in my mixing room. So I do a lot of my low end mixing with headphones, and these are actually some really, really nice headphones that have great low end. Excuse me. And I just do that because I don't want to mix the low end in here because it's just super boomy. And Julie asks, so the first Slate mix bus strip is mostly for saturation. Yeah, it's just some subtle saturation, honestly. And it's also just to kind of give it a little bit more of an analog feel. It kind of takes the digital feel away from it. That's especially true if you have it on every single track across the entire mix, because it basically is saying, oh, this is now just a console channel that you'd have in a studio. It is subtle. It's not like the most important purchase I've ever made, but I bought it. It does help a little bit, so I use it on everything. But I wouldn't say like, oh, you gotta go out and buy it. You can't mix until you have it. But I like it for me. John says, does the Hornet actually adjust the volume of the track? Yep, it does. It's just one big volume knob. That's all it is. Right here is just like right now the volume is turned up 3.4 dB. And it's actually turned up 3.4 dB full scale, which is the standard way that a DAW measures volume. It's not turned up 3.4 dB VU, even though it's a VU meter, which actually makes it very helpful because I know exactly how much to turn the volume up, but it's telling me sort of like, hey, in relation to a VU, which is what I care about, what's this volume going to be set at? And then Julie asks, what are you listening for with that one when you are adjusting it? When you say that one, I don't actually know what you mean. So please advise. Well, until Julia. Oh, there we go. Oh, the Slate Mix Bus. What are you listening for with that one when you're adjusting it? I'm kind of just listening for. There's some natural subtle compression that happens. I'm listening for that to a certain extent. There's some slight tone changes. I'm listening for that as well. Honestly, the Slate Virtual Console Collection, which is what this is, it's really more something to mix through than it is something that's going to make a massive change at the very beginning. And Slate's actually really big about talking about that as well. Is like, hey, you're going to throw this on everything and you're not really going to hear that much of a change. But your mix, by the end of the mix, is actually going to sound a lot better than if you didn't have it on the whole time. It's going to sound a lot less digital. So it's, again, it's one of those things where it's like, I don't really know if it makes a massive change instantly, but I really like mixing through it because I feel like I make better, more accurate mixing decisions that are going to be a little bit more vibier, if that makes sense. To where like if I took all of the Virtual Console collection off, you know, if I have it on every single track and I take it off every single track, it would sound a lot more dramatic than if I did it at the very beginning. Okay, cool. So let's get back to this. Hopefully that solved the problem. If not, we'll see what happens. Before we get started, let's refresh our ears and listen to our reference. Cool. All right, now let's listen to our current mix. Yeah, definitely we're going to need some top end, some mids, and cutting some bottom end. Let's try it on here. Now you can see how that's already a big help, even though like I'm only boosting it 2 decibels. It's a real wide boost. Good stuff. I feel like it needs a little bit more in the mids as well. So let me mess with this. It's helpful. Now, even though it looks like it's fairly aggressive, like I said, I'm only boosting a little over 2 decibels, a little over 1.5, which I guess makes this bit being boosted about 3.5 decibels. You really don't need to be aggressive on your mix bus EQ. It's more just to push you in the right direction, push your mix in the right direction, and then you can start to make some more aggressive moves on the individual instruments if you want. So let me clean out some of the bottom end here. Yeah, I'm hearing some roughness right here. I think I'm hearing something in the kind of like around 500 as well. Let me think for a moment. Yeah, I think that sounds bad, but I think that's the part I want to cut. U down just a hair. I'm going to take all the U down just a hair. Rob asks a bit of subtractive EQ to get rid of the room resonances. So I'm actually going to do that on the instrument level. You never want to do any sort of surgical EQ on your mix bus, because then you're going to take that frequency out of every single instrument in the entire mix. So if there's like a bad room resonance, like I'm hearing a pretty bad room resonance in the guitar, I'm going to want to go to the guitar and fix that. Whereas this is kind of more just broad tonal shaping. That's really it, just broad tonal shaping. And then I've got a little bit of a cut right here. I pretty much have this on everything. And that's because unless I'm mixing like dance music, there's really nothing below 30 hertz that's really all that useful. It's just muddying up the mix. It's just taking up headroom. So I just tend to cut it out pretty much entirely. Sometimes I'll even go up a little bit higher than that, just depending on the genre I'm working with. Now, if I'm doing dance music or I'm doing, maybe pop, or I'm doing something where it's got to be big and boomy, like hip hop, with a lot of sub energy, then yeah, I won't cut that out. But definitely not a garage rock band is gonna care about that. Yeah, like you can see all this stuff right here, fully unnecessary. Okay, yeah, so let me make sure first of all that I'm doing some proper gain staging. Now this is really important. This is something that like people just never talk about this with EQ. Gain staging with EQ is extremely overlooked. Whenever you're doing any sort of EQ moves, you're probably changing the volume. So in order to actually make accurate moves, you have to gain stage. And I don't really care so much about gain staging to get it to the exact right, dB full scale level. Like I said before, all I really care about is the loudness, like how I perceive the volume of the mix. So I'm going to do a before and after, and we're going to see what the change was. Oh, I'm actually going to take that back to 18. Okay, so kind of 4-2, somewhere in there. Now let me turn this on. Okay, so that's more 6-4. So we actually took a lot of volume out of this. So I'm going to go to my output, turn it up, let's say by 2, and we'll see if that's enough. That's maybe a little bit too much. Take it down by about half. So it's actually a lot easier to tell what your EQ is doing whenever you do proper volume balancing. Because sometimes, when you boost a bunch of stuff, it's actually adding volume, and our ears perceive louder sounds as sounding better. That's just the way our ears work for some reason. So sometimes you'll boost a bunch of stuff, you'll be like, oh my God, that sounds great. Well, no, it's just a lot louder. So if you go and you do your gain staging, you turn it down the right amount after checking it on like a VU meter or a loudness meter or something like that, you might turn it off and on and be like, oh, that just adds a lot of crap to this. Now that it's the same volume, you're just like, okay, that was a bad EQ move. So let me listen to my reference first off. I would also say that this is too loud right now. This is going through the VU meter. It's looking like it's hitting 1, 0. Okay, now let's listen to ours. This is still too loud. Let me try again. Okay, now let's listen to our mix. turn it off.
A
lot closer, right? Now that definitely boosted some stuff I don't like. Like for instance, the vocals now sound really like spitty, and the overheads, the overhead mics and the drums now sound maybe a little bit too aggressive. But the nice thing is that like I can go and fix that myself. Like I can go and make some kind of general cuts to make that work. But for everything else, I'd say this really helped. It definitely is a lot closer to my references, which is really what I'm shooting for. Even though I'm only doing, you know, a few dBs of really wide EQing. So let's move on from here. Next, I want to do some mix bus compression. And I actually like doing serial mix bus compression. Let me move you somewhere where you can live. Let's do medium. So there we go. And obviously, like I'm using two analog compressors. Now, part of the reason I like doing that is because it does add some nice saturation, some subtle saturation, just some nice vibe to the entire mix. You can obviously use digital compression. There's nothing wrong with that at all. But I feel like this adds a little bit more than just some really subtle compression. It adds more vibe, especially because the compression that's going to happen at the mastering stage is probably going to be digital. They're probably not going to do much in the way of analog compression, or at least if it is analog compression, it's going to be a very clean compressor. It's not really going to be adding much tone, which is what this is. This is sort of like some really subtle coloration, adding a little bit of color to it. I'm really not going to do that much at all, though. I'm going to add in, just a hair on both of these. And you can see pretty low ratio, 2-to-1, very fast attack. I have an adaptive release, which means that the compressor itself is paying attention to what's coming into it to determine where the release should be. So let me add this in. I'm actually going to flip these because I usually like my my faster compressor first whenever I'm doing any kind of serial compression. And this is an analog version, or rather digital version, of the Fairchild 670, which is just a really, really, really nice compressor. Obviously, it looks maybe a little bit intimidating. The big thing with this is that like they only use numbers for time, so like I don't actually have control of the attack or of the release. So it's hard for me to actually tell you, oh, this is what it's doing, because I'd have to look up the manual. So I tend to just do it by ear, but I know that like the first three tend to be very fast attack and pretty quick release. Oh, I see why I have this, because I have this set as a mid-side compressor. I'm not doing that for this. That's way too complicated. So let me link these. Well, first off, there we go. Okay, cool. So let me set these at 0. We'll go from there. Yes, we're going to want our output to be down a little bit. So I'm definitely going to have to turn the vocals down there so much because they are really getting dramatically compressed.
silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now. What you're ringing.
Oh god, that's awful.
Silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now. What you're ringing. Silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now. What you're ringing. Silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now. What
So one interesting thing about this, it really looks like the only thing that is triggering this compressor is the vocals. What that means, well, that means a lot of things. One, that means that the vocals are too loud because it really should be kind of moving constantly, just a little bit. But what's interesting is that, whenever we listen to our reference, the vocals sound really loud and really up front, whereas these vocals sound really far away, even though they're apparently too loud. And the reason for that, well, again, lots of reasons. One of the big reasons is that they recorded these vocals, I'll go and solo them, they recorded them in a big room, which means that there's lots of reverb that we can't get rid of. And in fact, the more we compress the vocals, the worse that reverb is going to get.
Ringing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet.
Hear that? Hear all that reverb that's happening behind? That's why people are so big on recording vocals in a small, well-treated room. Something that's going to soak up a lot of those frequencies, a lot of that reverb. Because I can add that in later on, and I can control it. But right now I can't. I'm going to have to compress it, which is just going to make it louder. Which also makes it seem like even though the volume is very loud, it makes it seem very far away from the listener. So I'm going to have to turn the volume of the vocals down, even though to my ears it's like, man, I need to turn them up. They need to be louder. But it's messing with our processing pretty dramatically.
Ringing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus.
It also means we're going to have to really create a hole in the entire mix for these vocals to live in the frequency spectrum of the mix, because these vocals are getting buried, super buried.
Silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now. What you're ringing.
Yeah, that's going to happen no matter what. That's sounding pretty good to me.
Silence
Let me make sure that I'm gain staging it well. So here's before.
silence
So it's kind of just hitting 3. Now let's look at it.
silence all these nights. Silence all these nights we spent together.
Yeah, it's fine. And it's adding just a little bit of something. It's grabbing kind of some of those peaks, which is nice. It's gluing it together just a little bit. Actually, I'm going to turn it down a hair. And now we're going to do our second compressor, which we're also going to make very subtle. Even though, on here we only did, 1 decibel of compression. That's really all you need.
Silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus.
Yeah, once we go back and do compression on our vocals, I might actually come back and tweak this. Because the vocals are going to be controlled on the vocal track. They're not going to have to be controlled by our mix bus compressors. So hopefully that will add compression to kind of like the whole mix. And really that's what we want, not just the vocals.
Silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now. What you're ringing. Silence all these nights we spent together.
So you can hear how whenever I take these on and off, you know, the mix just kind of comes forward a little bit. The mix sort of it adds just a little bit of presence to it. And I could get really aggressive if I wanted to. I would really try not to, because a lot of your compression is going to come from the mastering stage, at least your compression on the entire mix. I'm doing this more because I want, you know, not only just sort of like some really subtle compression, but I really just want the color more than anything. And I kind of want like a little bit of glue.
Silence of these nights spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and
You can see right here, I'm only doing 1, 2 dBs, doing 1 right there.
silence of these nights spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's wild what you're making. Silence of these nights spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's wild what you're making. Silence of these nights spent together.
Okay, very cool. Okay, that is our timer. We're not actually going to take a break now. That was just for me to know what's coming up. Oh, I forgot about this. This is like a mid-side thing that I do sometimes. I'm actually not going to do that on this mix. A, because it's unnecessary, and B, because it's confusing, and C, because like I don't think I can do that in my stock plugins. So, whereas like everything we've done so far, you can do on your stock plugins, I guess, except for this. Ooh, I just unplugged my headphones. There we go. I guess except for this, but this is doing something so subtle, I don't think it really matters that much. And the next thing we're going to do, which you can actually sort of fake in a lot of your DAWs by using some extremely subtle saturation if you have any, or distortion if you have any. I mean, like the most subtle. But I love running it through a tape machine, just kind of like as a last step, to really make it feel like a record, I guess. That said, it's a lot more difficult to control these things, so I don't always do it. And I always make sure to listen to my reference first. Okay. Ooh, let's mute that.
Silence of these nights spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's wild what you're making. Silence of these nights spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's wild what you're making.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna want to go and fix those cymbals. They're sounding really harsh. Like I think most of the mix sounds good through this, but the cymbals are sounding a lot more harsh, and I can actually just fix that on that level. Let's see if this is changing anything. I don't think it will, but okay. So 3 to 2. Oh yeah, I am actually taking some volume out. That's going a little bit too much. You hear what that does though? It really opens it up a little bit. Again, it's just some subtle saturation, but after you do some proper gain staging, you really do start to hear like, oh yeah, this is actually helping just a little bit. So let me take all of this off and then add it back on. You'll see the really massive change that we did. Listen to that. It's around the same volume. So it's not that it's just louder or anything. Now let's add this. Yeah, I like it a lot more. I definitely am going to want to go and address those cymbals. They're very harsh, and they got a lot harsher with this. But the rest of the instruments sound better, and really that's all I care about right now. Okay, we are going to get started on the rest of the mix. So luckily I've already done all of the editing. Hold on a second. There we go. Luckily I've already done all of the editing. So there's no real need to, go through and clean anything, or do any sort of, tuning or messing with the rhythm. Now, usually if I was doing a mix, this is kind of when I would do that. Like I've set up my volume stuff, I've set up my mix bus, and now it's like, okay, I'm going to go and just make sure that all of the instruments are, like, I'm going to go and make sure that the performance is good, basically. But yeah, I don't have to do that. So I am going to listen through for any room resonances that I need to cut, which I already know where to start, which is with this guitar. And then from there, I'm going to move on and either I'm trying to decide if I want to do some more general EQ or if I want to work on it instrument by instrument. I think I'm actually going to go instrument by instrument because I really want to work on these vocals. So let's listen to this. Oh, wow. Looks like I already made one. Make another one.
Spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying around what
Okay. It sounds like a lot of the issue is also in the bass and how the bass is interacting with everything. Let me listen to it in context of the entire mix.
silence all this night we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's flying around. Silence all this night we spent together. They've left.
One nice way to tell if there's any room resonances, if you're hearing something in a mix, is actually just to go instrument by instrument and try muting stuff. And if it vanishes all of a sudden, you found the problem instrument.
Silence all this night we spent together.
Like if I'm hearing a very woo 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 kind of sound coming from the bass, so I'm going to try to cut that. Okay, Rob asks when you don't have a specific track or mic for an instrument, the subtractive EQ could be done on the mix bus or sub bus. I don't totally know what you mean whenever you say a specific track or mic for an instrument. Could you explain a little bit more, Rob? While you're working on that, I'm gonna listen through for any other room resonances. Okay, John asks if you record direct in via USB, do you still get room resonances? No, you do not, or you shouldn't, I guess. Um, if you're recording an acoustic guitar, sometimes you will because there's actually resonances that will happen naturally because of the sound hole. Just with certain guitars, stuff gets caught in the sound hole and then interacts with the room around it, and some weirdness can happen. So with stuff like that, you can still have resonances, but like if you're recording let's say an electric guitar, nah, you're not going to have any resonances, excuse me, because you're taking that pretty much entirely out of the signal chain. Okay, Rob got back and says if you have few studio mic only, so are you saying that like your whole band recorded something at the same time, and you've just got those microphones, and so all you have is just like 2 or 3 microphones for the entire song, not for specific instruments? Rob, is that correct? Um, I assume when you say other performances, you mean like a live show or something like that. Yeah, I would do it on each individual mic. So rather than doing it track by track, um, I would go to um, let's say you just have 3 microphones put up around the room. I would go to each individual mic, solo it out, listen for room resonances, cut the room resonances, and then go from there. Doing it on the mix bus, you might be cutting room resonances out of microphones where there are no room resonances. It's not like the whole room has just bad resonances. Sometimes it's just like the placement of of the microphone that causes the resonance. So, um, yeah, I definitely would never, ever, ever cut room resonances on the mix bus. I would always go microphone by microphone and do that. Oh, Robert's back. Cool. Well, let me answer your question, Robert. So, when do you um, I believe you're saying when do you think is the best time to use markers, arrange, and tempo to organize the track? When you say arrangement, I assume you mean like the Logic arrangement thing. I don't actually ever use the Logic arrangement thing, honestly. A lot of people love it. I just never really, like, I know how to use it, I just never really needed it. Um, as far as markers go, I mean, I definitely use markers just to tell me where the beginning of each section of the song is. And as far as tempo goes, I mean, everything is set to the same global tempo. For this particular track, you can see there's actually 2 tempos. They change tempos from the intro, which you can hear. I'll move it ahead. To here.
Through the silence of the night you spent.
So it's actually 2 different tempos. But you can go in and change those tempos if you'd like. Like there are ways to do it in every single DAW. But I don't have necessarily like different tempos on every single track or anything like that. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, let me go back and I'm just going to listen to the whole mix, and we are going to see if we can hear any room resonances that are peeking out to us. When you say that you use markers for, sorry, I'm going back to Robert. He says, I use arrange for the entire song and markers for folders and groups. I honestly don't totally know what you mean by using markers for folders and groups. Unless you're like writing multiple songs in the same session or something like that. So I guess I just am unsure of what you mean. You honestly just, it's really just whatever way works for you. If using the arrange section in Logic works best and using markers for other things works best, totally fine. For me, I don't really like the arrangement section, and I like using the markers for telling me what part of the song I'm in. So, personal preference. I don't think I'm hearing any in here, but let's check. That might be one. Yeah, I actually just think that's part of the sound. So I don't think I'm going to cut that.
Listening and where you thread love.
Yeah, I'm not really hearing too many other room resonances outside of this one that we already cut. I'm kind of hearing something in here. There as we go. Yeah. So one of the best ways to know if you've found a room resonance is if you hear sort of the same note happening no matter what chord is being played, no matter what note is being played. And you can tell right there, you hear that boom, 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 that's happening the whole time. Yeah, the cool thing about cleaning room resonances is whenever you turn it off, you can really hear the difference even when before you couldn't. So here's like, you know, after sounds normal, and then here's before. You can really hear that boop 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 boop. So nothing here. Boop boop boop. I'm not hearing this one quite as much, but that one I'm definitely hearing. Okay, very cool. Let's see if there's any room resonances in the chorus, the vocals, because the vocals are sounding kind of odd as they are.
Nights we've spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing through the silence. All these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing through the silence.
Yeah, it looks like no, because like that sounds like a bad frequency, but then as soon as he's not singing that note, it goes away. So that's not a room resonance. It's just a weird singing technique. Cool. All right, let's move on to the vocals. Let's just start doing the vocals. I'm going to get rid of this. One really great tip I can give, I actually have presets of every single one of my instruments. And I've got it all organized, which you can do in most DAWs. But I've got presets of plugins that I use the most. Now, the nice thing about this, like I usually throw this on and then turn all of it off. And I'll still sort of go one by one and just make sure that everything's working. But the nice thing is that, like, you know, I've sort of got some initial settings on all of it. Stuff that I like, and like I'll go and I'll tweak it, and maybe I'll get rid of it if it doesn't fit that particular instrument. But it's very helpful because it just gives you a good starting spot. So first off, let us start with our EQ.
Nights we spent through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet ringing through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
I'm hearing some weird latency all of a sudden. Are y'all hearing that? Do I have like... Hold on. Oversampling is off. Look at it up.
Ringing through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet. Ringing through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with. Ringing through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
Yeah, interesting. So that means one of these plugins is adding a lot of latency. That for some reason is not being compensated for. I don't actually know why. Again, remember earlier whenever we had some logic problems and I was like, this is half of mixing. It's just figuring out why the thing isn't working. Another one of these great moments. Let me go and make sure that plugin delay is on. Delay compensation. I just forget where that is. It's been so long. Oh, here. It's on. Let's see if that helps.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
Okay, so it looks like that's not changing anything, which means it's one of these plugins that's causing it. So here's the fun part, which is trying to figure out exactly what plugin is causing it. So I'm just going to get rid of one plugin at a time until all of a sudden it snaps back into place. And then we'll know the culprit.
Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together.
That sounded like it helped.
Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together.
Hello.
Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together. They've left. Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together. They've left me with.
Okay, let's see if any other ones are causing problems as well.
Singing through the silence. All. Singing through the silence. All. Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's.
Interesting. I'm unsure in this moment why like it's causing such a big delay on the vocals.
Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together.
Because it's like a full 16th note off now. Because I want to use these plugins. So we're going to take a quick moment. And I want to see if I can figure out what's going wrong here. So give me 2 or 3 minutes. I'm actually going to... let's just say I'm going to put on the image and mute myself. Y'all will still be able to talk to me through the chat, but just give me a quick second to figure out what exactly is going on here. Okay, I'm back. Yeah, I actually agree with Rob on this one. After doing some testing and a little bit of research, all my settings are right. But for some reason, delay, or rather plug-in delay compensation has just been fully turned off on this. And for anyone who's unaware of what that is, this is actually a great teaching moment. Basically, whenever you put plugins onto particular tracks, because of the amount of time it takes to process those plugins, it does cause a delay on the track. Now, most DAWs, in fact, all DAWs, have figured out a way to deal with this, which is what's called delay or plugin delay compensation, where basically they calculate the amount of delay that's been created because of these plugins, and they push the entire session forward or back that amount. So basically, you can put on whatever plugins you need, but it doesn't actually change the timing of that particular track. Now, for some reason, I guess because of that weird... Sorry about that. Because of that weird MIDI failure thing that happened earlier where I was saying, oh, I don't actually want to restart my computer because then that would end this stream and, we wouldn't be able to do it again. It, for some reason, has fully disabled the delay compensation part of Logic. So what that means for us is that I'm going to have to make sure that I'm using only low latency introducing plugins. So I'm not going to be using like a ton of really, really good analog plugins or anything like that, which is not the end of the world. But this is going to be a bit of a different mix than I would have done otherwise. So we'll keep that in mind. But for right now, I'd say we move on. And I've gotten rid of the two plugins that were the biggest problem, and I'll probably just use like the Logic standard compressor in their place. So yeah, let's move on. Okay, so listening to the vocal. First thing I'm going to do is find some places, see if there's any room resonances in it. I guess we've already done that actually, so I'm just going to be finding some places to cut.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
That's definitely something. All right, let's see what we got over here.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent.
There's kind of some nasally stuff going on right there, so I'm gonna cut that as well.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay, so let's open up that VU meter from earlier. There you are. Let's see the before and after.
Hanging through the silence.
I'm actually going to solo it.
Singing through the silence, all
So
the
kind of 7 to 5. Now let me add this.
singing through the silence, all these
So I took
nights.
out probably 2 to 3 decibels of gain. So let's try this.
Singing through the silence, all these nights. Singing through the silence, all these. Singing through the silence,
Yeah, there we
all
go.
these-
Cool. So let's see what that sounds like in context.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
So one nice part about this is like whenever you do your gain staging and you don't really hear that much of a difference, that's usually a sign that you actually can do some more aggressive cuts if you want. So I'm going to double this to up to 6. I'm going to double this up to 6, and we'll see what that is going to do. So first off, I'm going to solo this out, do some gain staging.
Singing through the silence of
Okay, so that needs to go up about another dB.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
Okay,
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
okay, I'm feeling like there's still something up here and maybe down in the low mids that's kind of problematic as well.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They left me with the night and it's
Yeah, there you go.
through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence all
Okay,
the nights we spent together.
let's see if we need to turn up the volume at all.
Singing through the silence all
Just a hair.
Singing through the silence all these Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
So here's the important thing to note about this. And I'm actually going to grab Logic's EQ to show you what I'm about to tell you. EQ. I'll just do this. Cool. So, there we go. So whenever you are gain staging your EQ, you know, it's easy to think, oh, okay, yeah, like I'm just sort of compensating. I'm just compensating for, you know, this gain that's been lost. Like I obviously want it to be the same volume level. That's definitely true. But what you're really doing is you're saying, hey, I want to cut these places or I want to boost these places. And I'm going to, we'll stick with cut now for the example. I'm going to cut these places and I'm going to boost everything, which inherently means I'm going to be cutting some stuff, but I'm also going to be boosting everything that I didn't cut, which I think is a really, really great way of knowing if you did a good job of balancing the sound rather than just like cutting some stuff out. So let me, I'm just going to, this is probably going to sound bad. I'm not even going to really try to make it sound good. This is just for an example. That was probably around there. And I think that was kind of here-ish. So let's see what this sounds like before.
Singing through the silence all
Well, let me actually turn this off. So,
Singing through the silence all these
okay, and after.
Singing through the silence all these nights we
Okay, so we lost a lot. So look at what happens on the Logic EQ whenever I turn the volume up over here. You see how it's turning up everything? That's basically what's happening. So I'm essentially boosting all of these sections and cutting these sections just a little bit less.
Singing through the silence
So I still need more,
Singing through the silence
a
all
little bit more.
Singing through the silence Singing through the silence all
There we
these
go.
nights we spent together. Singing through the silence all these Singing through the silence all these nights.
You hear how there's, like, that opened it up so much. But the big thing is that, like, in reality, rather than cutting, you know, what is this, 8.5 decibels, you're actually only cutting at about 6 decibels, and you're boosting all this other stuff by 4 decibels or something like, I guess, 3.5 decibels. It really does change the way you EQ whenever you focus on gain staging after you make your EQ moves. You're going to not only have a much more accurate picture of whether or not what you did helped, but for the first time, like, you're actually going to hear a much more balanced sound in context to what it was before. And it's also going to help you realize, like, oh, there are times where I can be more aggressive with EQ and it's okay. Because if I'm cutting out 10 dBs, something insane like that, and I'm not doing any volume compensation, well, yeah, it's going to sound really bad because you've not only cut out 10 decibels of a guitar or something like that, but also you've probably turned the volume down 3 or 4 dBs. And like I said earlier, the ear hears loud sounds, excuse me, the ear hears loud sounds as sounding better, more exciting, and softer sounds as sounding worse and weaker. That doesn't mean everything has to be as loud as possible. You know, obviously that's really bad. But whenever you're doing any kind of processing, making sure you're hearing it at the same loudness basically ensures that you are making good mix decisions, and you're not just making it quieter so it's worse, or you're not just making it louder so it's better. Okay, let me get out of this.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
I actually kind of liked what I did on this more.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
What did I do here? 5.8. Yeah, so I think I just did some more aggressive cuts.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and singing through the silence all these nights. Singing through the silence.
Ooh, that's definitely too much.
Singing through the silence all these nights we
And I'm
spent.
spending a lot of time on this. I usually don't spend this much time. I kind of get it to where it's close, and then I move on. It doesn't need to be like an exact sort of thing. But I just want you to hear exactly what I'm talking about.
Singing through the silence all these. Singing through the silence all these.
Hear how even though I didn't do any boosting in the lows or the low mids, it sounds warmer. It sounds so much warmer. And that's because, like I said, like I cut all this stuff out, and then because I boosted the entire frequency spectrum to compensate for it, I essentially boosted this whole bit 6 decibels, and now it sounds a lot warmer.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
All right, let's take that out of solo and see what that happens. Okay, Julia asks, for the vocals right now, you are tone shaping, right? You said that there are no room resonances. Yeah, I'd say there's no room resonances that we can fix anyway. The room they recorded this in is definitely a bad room for this. I mean, the fact that I can hear so much reverb in it, and the fact that also his voice is just really wonky and is sounding like it's changing from moment to moment. A lot of times that's because his voice is reacting poorly to the room. So yeah, I wish that I could go in and do a bunch of cuts to cut the room resonances, but it sounds like the room is changing so much because his voice is changing so much that, you know, I might cut something and it might only help for 5 seconds of the whole mix, even though for 5 seconds of the whole mix, it's really problematic. So this is a really good example of why it's important to treat your rooms with acoustic treatment, or just pick the best room you can, if nothing else. But yeah, let me take this out of solo and we'll hear what that sounds like.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay, I'm gonna put on a de-esser now because his S's are getting pretty harsh. How de-essers work, it's pretty simple. I actually really love using wideband de-essers. A lot of de-essers have split band, which basically means like, oh, I'm only compressing, the top bit where the S is. I think that sounds kind of unnatural for me personally, so I actually just use it almost. I guess I wouldn't say this is more like a multiband compressor, whereas this is just like it's only listening to one particular part of the frequency spectrum. So it's only listening to 8 kilohertz to 14 kilohertz, and then it's turning everything down for a split second when that S happens. So let me solo it. This is something you can solo. It's okay.
Singing through the silence all these nights.
So one cool thing with this particular plugin is I can actually solo out the S's. So I can make sure that it's accurately working.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
So if I do it too much, you can hear how it almost sounds like a lisp.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
How it's like ringing through the silence, so it makes it almost too long, if that makes sense.
Singing through the silence all these nights.
It's unnatural. So there's not really like an absolute number that you have to hit. You just got to use your ears. The rule of thumb is once it starts to sound lispy, you've gone too far.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and
but there's no gain staging I have to do on this because it's only compressing, very, very small bits.
singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
Cool. That works for me. Okay, now I want to do some compression. And since we had a bit of a break, I'm actually going to go for an extra 5 or 10 minutes since we sort of had a bit of a pause moment with my weird tech issues. So this is the FabFilter Pro Pro compressor. I mean, it works just like a regular compressor. There's nothing really all that different about it. It's just really high quality. One thing that I really like about it is that it can actually handle super fast attack times really, really well. Now, a lot of people, instead of using a digital compressor with super fast attack times, they might use like an 1176, which is an analog compressor plugin that is well known for the same thing. One thing that I think a lot of teachers really overlook, and this might actually be something that I am at odds with Rob. Not that I think that Rob is wrong, but just something that he and I disagree on. I think a lot of teachers really shy away from fast attack times because if you do them wrong, they can just wreck your sound, which is totally correct. But if you look at compressors from the 50s on, before digital compression came along, most of the compressors, with the exception of some of them, actually had really fast attack times. Like the 1176 is one of the most used compressors of all time, and its attack time is somewhere between 2 milliseconds and about 5 microseconds. So literally, a fraction of a millisecond. So an incredibly fast attack time. And that was on every record that you've ever listened to that came out before 1985. Just about. And while that doesn't work on every single instrument, obviously, and I'm not saying that it should, it is something that we have all shied away from because if you're too aggressive with that type of thing without knowing what you're doing, it can make something sound lifeless. It can really suck the life out of it. But if you're trying to get a more professional sound, A lot of times the studios are using stuff with this hyper fast attack time. Now, I don't know if I would do that on your stock compressors. Logic stock compressor is great, but you do have to have kind of a higher quality compressor to do stuff like this. But I'm actually going to have a microsecond attack time on this. And I'm going to do 2 compressors, so serial compression, just like I did on the mix bus. And I'm just going to get a little bit just to grab the peaks. That's all. All I'm wanting to do is control the vocal a little bit.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
So I'm actually going to, there's some weirdness that I've put in here that is unnecessary.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They left me with tinnitus and it's quiet.
Okay, let me turn this up.
Singing through the silence, all these.
That's why. Okay.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
I'm gonna take a quick moment and I'm just gonna fix this. This is so unbelievably loud. I'm gonna go in and basically just turn the gain down dramatically so that it's the same volume as everything else. Now, that is going to mean that because we haven't done any volume automation, it's going to be pretty darn quiet because he stepped away from the mic whenever he's saying that. But it's not going to just completely wreck all of our compression.
They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Yeah, it's crazy that like there's so much reverb in that. Let me solo it.
Tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
That there's so much reverb in it. He's so far away from the mic that it gets that quiet in context of the mix. So, real crazy stuff.
But you're ringing.
Let me do that.
Without you, but you're ringing.
Cool. John has a question. Rob goes into this in his latest compressor vid and shows the effects on the waveform, especially on transients. Ooh, I actually haven't watched that. I think that came out only a few days ago. I need to check that out. That was an idea that we had talked about, like a year ago. That's cool. Did I lose? I did. Here we go. Cool. So, let me go back to where I was. This is the loudest part of the vocal. I'm only really wanting to get 2, maybe 3 dBs of compression on this. I'm not just trying to wreck it.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
It's so quiet. Oh man, weird stuff. Okay, let me solo this out. Let's do some gain staging.
Singing through the silence, all the.
Let me turn it off.
Singing through the silence, all.
Okay, so that's hitting 7.
Singing through the silence, all.
So that's interesting. It actually, auto gain is on. That's why I want to turn auto gain off.
Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent. Singing through the silence, all. Singing through the silence, all.
Yeah, so a little bit too much. But yeah, that's plenty at this point. So let's listen in context.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet. Singing through the silence, all these.
You hear how it starts to sound a lot more forward? That's because it's grabbing basically the entire waveform. It's just grabbing everything and taking it down a little bit. It is making the S's sound a lot more aggressive, so I am going to do a little bit more de-essing.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But
I might actually experiment with moving the de-esser after this.
hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But you're hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now.
I don't know which I like more.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But you're
I think I like that a little bit better. I'll move on from there. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add another compressor. I'm just going to use the Logic compressor because it's usually has some pretty low latency. Let me look at it real quick. It doesn't even have the latency on it. That's annoying. So that's not really going to mess with this weird delay compensation thing. But yeah, so I'm going to get something with a slower attack time. I'm going to use the vintage opto setting because I was originally going to be using an LA2A, which is an analog compressor that's well known for just making stuff sound really smooth. It's got a really slow attack time. So I'm going to just mess with it a little bit. We'll see what happens.
hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But you're hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with
I think this thing needs some help now that I'm kind of looking through it. I am going to throw on, before we continue with the compressor, I'm going to throw on the Waves. Where is it? Before I tell you what it is. The Waves Vocal Writer. So one thing that's really important whenever you're doing any kind of editing is you basically go in and do what's called gain automation. And that's where you are going in and maybe you're cutting particular regions of instruments and, going in here and turning the gain of them up or down so that they are more consistent overall. That's basically, to a certain extent, that's what I did with this thing right here, is I did some gain automation. Now, gain automation is extremely important with vocals, but it's also very time consuming. It's pretty difficult to go in and individually grab every single thing. Turn this up just a little bit, turn this down a little bit. It helps a ton, but it can just take a while because vocals are so dynamic. So I really enjoy using the Vocal Writer, which is a thing from Waves. It's usually pretty cheap when it's on sale. It's not perfect, but it does a really good job of basically doing that gain automation for me. It's almost like a pre-compressor before compression. So I'll usually put this on before anything else. And I'm going to do this just to help make it a little bit more consistent.
hanging through the silence.
I'm going to set this at 18.
Hanging through the silence, nights we've spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But you're hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But you're hanging through the silence.
Okay, now that I've done that, that's going to help out a lot, but I'm going to need to go and kind of make some tweaks.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus.
Still okay.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
That's still okay.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. But you're hanging through the silence.
Okay, let me do this. How do you decide on the target? So yeah, Zia asked, how do you decide on the target for the Vocal Writer? You can either do it by eye, and just kind of be like, okay, where in general is, is the vocal living? Like I only want the vocal to be moving sort of like up and down just a little bit. I don't really want it to like constantly be down or constantly be up. But I also know that I already did some initial gain staging, and I set the vocals to be kind of sitting around 0 dBVU before I even started this whole process. And 0 dBVU is the same thing as negative 18 dBFS. So if you click on this, you can actually see there's a number. This is basically like the target you're going for, the dB full scale target you're going for. And again, that's just like the way that DAWs measure volume. That's the thing you're seeing here on the volume fader. So because I know it's sort of sitting around 0 dBVU, I know I'm probably going to want to set it at negative 18 for here, just because like I already know it's sitting around there. But if I hadn't already done that, then I would just sort of watch it for a while, 10 seconds, and kind of see like, is it moving up and down? Is it only moving up, or is it only moving down? And I'm trying to get it to where it's moving up and down. Okay, let's solo that out and make sure that I've got this gain staged.
Singing through the silence.
So that's 5.
Singing through the silence.
This like might be a little bit too much now.
Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. All these nights we spent together.
Zia asks, so the fader should be somewhere in the middle of the yellow bar. I assume you mean this yellow bar. Yeah. I mean, somewhere kind of in here is fine. Again, it really only depends on what this fader is doing. Like if I set this really high, you'll see
Singing through the silence.
it's just constantly
all
up
these
here.
nights we
If I set it really low,
singing through the
it's
silence.
just constantly
all
down to the
these
bottom. So I'm really just wanting to set it where it's moving up and down around the 0 area.
Singing
Because like if it's only turning it down or it's only turning it up, then it's just a compressor basically at that point.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing through. Singing through.
Cool. Okay, let's try this out.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you.
Okay, I'm going to do some gain staging.
Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence. Singing through the silence, all these nights we
So
spent
it looks actually pretty good. I did add a little bit of distortion, which is just saturation, to kind of lean into the analogness of this. So that makes sense. That adds a lot of makeup gain just in the way Logic does it.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence.
So let's listen to a before and after of just this compression, because like this has made a pretty big change already. So here's before.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus.
Same loudness level. You realize that. Now let's do this.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus.
Here it sounds a lot louder, even though it's technically kind of sitting in the same area. That's just because whenever you're doing compression, you are turning up the perceived loudness of a sound. Whenever you're making the softer sounds louder, the ear just sort of perceives it as being fully louder, even if it's kind of the same actual amount of volume. So yeah, I think that helped a lot. So let's actually answer Rob Nixon's question. which is, on a voice like this, would you use side chaining on a compressor on some of those instruments that are competing with the voice? I think that is a fantastic idea. A voice like this really needs a lot of space created for it. And one thing, excuse me, one thing that that Rob is talking about is basically adding some compression to particular instruments whenever the voice is in, so that the volume is literally taken down. I actually have something set up. No, I'm gonna do something different than the thing I usually have set up. But I think that's a really, really good idea. I am gonna do that kind of probably halfway through the mix, once I move into like, all the electric guitars, which are really competing a lot, and like maybe potentially the overheads or this synth drone or something like that. I think that would be a big help. But for now, we're going to continue working on this this vocal. So I'm actually going to, I was listening to it during the break. I feel like it needs a little bit more compression. But instead of using a compressor, I'm actually going to use some saturation. So saturation is, if you have or haven't heard of it, it's basically the better sounding version of distortion. Saturation is what happens. Let me actually rewind all of this. Saturation is the reason why people love analog gear so much, because analog gear is imperfect, so it actually adds extra frequencies while it's processing the audio. It's adding distortion, but distortion is usually actually the thing taking frequencies away, whereas saturation is adding new frequencies. And so whenever you use, tons of analog gear, a tiny amount of saturation is added every time. So by the end, it sounds really thick. It sounds really fat. It also has some natural compression elements to it. So instead of using a third compressor, I'm going to try to use a little bit of saturation. This is just the FabFilter Saturn. I'm using just like the gentle saturation setting on that. And I'm just going to mix this in, and we're going to see what happens.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
Hold on a second.
They've left me with tonight. Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left.
Yeah, just a little bit. And one cool thing about this particular plugin is you can actually do multi-band saturation. And I don't want literally anything on this band because I don't really want to saturate that nasty stuff down at the bottom.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're hanging.
Okay, let's see if this is just adding volume or if it's actually helping out. So before
Hanging through the silence,
7 to 5 and after.
hanging through the silence, all these.
It's not really adding that much at all.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
And one important thing to know is that saturation is probably not going to sound great in solo. It's really more something that helps in context of the rest of the mix.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights. Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together.
I think I'm actually going to mix it in. So let's do that.
Hanging through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're hanging through the silence, all these nights.
Okay. Let's do some gain staging.
Singing through the silence, singing through the silence, singing through the silence.
Okay, that's taken out a little bit too much.
Singing through the silence all these nights. Singing through the silence, singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Yeah, that's adding just some real good subtlety in there.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with
I'm only mixing in about
tinnitus and
20%,
it's
so
quiet
nothing
now
really-
without you.
Nothing really dramatic at all, which is perfect. But you can already tell how it sounds a lot more consistent. I'm sure you guys are really enjoying hearing me eat. That's, I bet, the best part of your day. Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to open up another EQ. And usually I do an analog EQ here, but again, I know we're kind of worried about some problems with latency, so I'm just going to use another digital one.
Singing through the silence all these
And let's make some cuts and boosts. I really should be going back to here to do my tonal EQ, but like sometimes, if I'm being honest, the way that my workflow works, I get to the end and I'm kind of like, oh, this is too harsh, so I just throw it on at the end and I leave it at that.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Yeah, that hurts.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without.
Okay, there was kind of some harshness that was happening, partially because of the saturation, so I cut a little bit up there. I do want to boost the top end a little bit, give it some of that professional sheen. So let's do that.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence
doing
all these
anything?
nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're
No,
ringing.
not again.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent.
The spinning beach ball of death. Ugh. Ugh. Okay, well, yeah, it looks like this thing is happening again. It'd be wonderful to know why it was happening. I am going to turn off Logic and restart it, just like last time. Hopefully that'll fix it.
Singing through the silence.
Okay, good. It's working again.
Singing through the silence all these nights we spent together.
this may not end up getting any of that professional sheen I was talking about. Because whenever I boosted it, I don't know if y'all could hear that, but it just gets, yeah, it just gets harsh whenever I boost the top end, and a lot of that is that room sound, and a lot of that is just the singer's voice. Daedalus, I'm with you. One of us does need to write the song called "The Spinning Beach Ball of Death." It would be a very sad song. Okay, let's see if there's anything we can do here. Kind of the mids. It's still sounding a little weird to me.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
I'm gonna go back here and cut more of the bottom end out because there's still quite a bit.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without.
I'm gonna do another one. Because there's just no need to have all that gross stuff happening down there.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with.
Okay, let's do some gain staging and see if that has helped or hurt.
Singing through the silence, singing through the silence, singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Remember earlier whenever I was saying, oh, if you can't really hear that much of a difference, that's a pretty good sign that you could be more aggressive with the EQ? That's what I would say about here. So one nice thing about this particular EQ is I can actually just do that here if I want to.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you.
Let me make sure that
Singing through the silence, singing through the silence, singing through the silence, singing through the silence, all these nights, singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you. Singing through the silence, singing through the silence, all these nights, singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Okay, so let's check this against our reference. And again, we do need to temper our expectations because, you know, the reference track obviously has been recorded in a really, really nice studio. Okay.
Singing through the silence, all these nights we spent together. They've left me with tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
So there's definitely some trade-offs for having this saturation on here because I think it does actually help to make the voice a little bit less aggressive, which is interesting. You'd think it would be the opposite. But you can hear some audible crunchiness in it now, which not the end of the world. They like a lo-fi sound, so a lo-fi sound is good. But if that's not what you want, if you're wanting something as clean as our reference track, well, you know, that may or may not be what you're going for. So This is a really good situation where it's like, yeah, I think we should move on to another instrument. We could continue to tweak the vocal for a long time because this vocal is a very difficult one to balance. But I'd say we have definitely improved it. Let's do a before and after so you can hear what happened.
In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and
Okay, now let's hear after.
in silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing.
Yep, some good stuff. Like I said, it's maybe a little bit too, maybe a little too compressed at times, and maybe a little bit too distorted at times, and it's still got some weird harshness in it. But since this is a demonstration, we're going to be moving on regardless. That said, now that we've mixed it and compressed it, let's go back to our mix bus compressions and do some tweaks.
In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together.
Okay, looks like I changed the volume a little bit. So again, let's grab our VU meter. We'll do a before.
Silence,
Kind of 4 to 2.
silence, all these nights we spent together.
So let's turn it up a little bit.
Silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're
I think I'm going to tweak this a little bit as well.
in silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence, all these nights we spent together, they've left me with tinnitus and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing. In silence.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'd say we spend the next 20-30 minutes before we head out working on our drum set. Cool. So some of these things are going to be necessary, some of them are not, partially because I've already done them during edit. Okay, let's see if this is going to cause some really serious delay. Yeah, it's causing some delay, but I don't think it's the end of the world. Okay, let's see if we can do a little bit of mixing on this kick. I'm just going to solo out the drum bus for a moment. Actually, first and foremost, I just want to go to the overheads and the rooms and fix some of the harshness in this. It is getting kind of out of hand. Give me a quick moment. There's some... I might need to fix the alignment of these. Try that again. I don't know if that really helped enough to... Yeah, just forget I even did that. So regardless, let's do our gain staging. So it's hitting right under 10. Okay, cool. So we took out 5 decibels of gain with this. That's a lot. Yeah, and if we hadn't have gain staged it, we would have never known if that actually helped or hurt. Yeah, that already has helped. Okay, now let's do the same over here. Okay, that sounds a little bit better to me. Let's check this. Woo. Okay, so we need to momentarily turn the volume of this up pretty dramatically, just for a moment. Okay, so it's hitting about 3 once the snare comes in. It's in about 5 now, so let's do about 2. There we go. Yeah, sounds cleaner. Good stuff. Take this away now. Yeah, the drums sound a lot less harsh now, which is perfect. Let me go through here and actually, I'm just going to take off these 2 things that I did so you can hear before and after. So before. And after. You really do lose a lot of the cymbals in this, which means that I might want to turn this up, which is, I think, really good. You know, the fact that, you know, I'm losing so much of the cymbals means that it's controlled a little bit more, so I'm able to increase it, and that's actually going to give a little bit more energy to the kick and the snare. Good stuff. Okay, Julia asks, what were the edits that you made to the drums before you started mixing? Oh man, so many. They were rough. I did a lot of phase aligning, which you actually saw me do with the overheads here. I have a system called Auto Align that really helps to align the phase of stuff, like exactly. It is not necessary by any means, but it is just a lot faster. So you don't got to go out and blow $300 on this, seriously. Like it's fine. But it just helped my workflow out a little bit. So did a lot of phase aligning, that helped a lot. I did a lot of time aligning, just aligning the performance of the drums with the performance of everything else. Not necessarily tightening up the drums themselves, but just making sure that everything was kind of a little bit more aligned to the performance of the band. I did do some gating. I think I did some gating on this. Let me listen. Yeah. I definitely did some gating on this because you can't actually hear any of like the in-between sounds, and there should be some pretty loud sounds in between. So, yeah, so gating, mess with the phase. I aligned the phase. I think I might have done a little bit of room resonance stuff, and I made sure that the performance was matched up. That was pretty much it. Sorry, I gotta go, Rob. Really enjoyed having you here. You asked some really good questions today. Have a great rest of your week. Okay, let's check out the kick. Woo! Man, this mix has so much crap happening in it. I'm going to do a lot of EQ cutting on this thing at the next session. I don't even think I'm going to boost anything.
tinnitus, and it's quiet now without you, but you're ringing through the silence of.
Okay, so I'll be honest with y'all. There's some stuff I want to go over with mixing your kicks that I think is really, really important. But it's going to take probably 20 or 30 minutes to cover it. Like I want to, if anyone was at the coaching session on Thursday, we talked a lot about crest factor, which is really, really helpful on getting loudness. And that's something I want to go over in a lot more detail with this, but that's going to take longer than we have for the rest of this session. So I think this is actually a good place to end it for the month. I recognize that we didn't really get all the way through the mix. In fact, we only got about a third of the way, but I still think we got some really, really good work done. I think we got some really good explaining done of a lot of concepts. And then next time, now that we've gotten sort of all of our foundation good to go, we will be able to get started really and truly and get all of these instruments mixed, make some space for the vocals to live in, and we'll be able to be good from there. So I will see all of you, I believe, next month or potentially in a few weeks. I kind of forget what the schedule is, but regardless, we will be sure to let you know when the next studio session is. I've had a ton of fun. Hopefully you all enjoy mixing with these stems that I sent you. Would be very interested to see how you handle such a difficultly recorded session as you have with this. Great song. Love the song. But definitely a bit of a difficult recording. So, all right. I'll talk to you all very soon. Bye.